On this edition of Sightings, 20 years ago, a military helicopter was attacked by an unknown craft in the skies above Cleveland, Ohio.
It didn't have any wings, it didn't have any windows.
After 2 decades, those involved still want answers.
It didn't sink in that it was still a UFO.
Then, did Alfred Hitchcock shoot his masterpiece of terror at a haunted location?
It was disturbingly populated, and there was nobody there.
Plus, this man's dreams may solve a double homicide.
They were telling me who did it.
Later, a prophecy of hope. And astronauts describe their encounters in space.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Virtually unknown by all but the most dedicated ufologists, a confirmed sighting in Mansfield, Ohio may be the most significant UFO encounter to date. Why isn't Mansfield, Ohio in the pantheon of UFO hotspots? Because the key witnesses wouldn't, or were instructed not to, talk publicly. Until now. It was October 1973. A Cleveland, Ohio police detective asked his partner to meet him in an interrogation room. The cop wanted to make a report about the strangest thing that had ever happened to him, and he wanted it on tape.
Today is October the 19th, 1973, and the time is approximately 2 p.m. I have with me in my office at the present time Detective John Healy. Healy's going to describe in his own way of an incident that had occurred last night.
Okay, we left Port Columbus Airport at about 10:30 last night. And about 11 o'clock, which is halfway...
The tape you are listening to is an important historical document. It is a permanent record of a UFO encounter that occurred on the night of October 18th, 1973, as witnessed by Detective John Healy.
It had a steady red light on its nose. It was cigar-shaped, and it had a green light shining down out of the aft end.
When Detective Healy wasn't on the beat, he was an Army Reserve medic. On the night in question, Healy and 3 other reservists were returning to Cleveland via helicopter from their annual Army physical. Over the town of Mansfield, Ohio, all 4 men made contact with a UFO. Detective Healy now speaks publicly about the incident for the first time in 20 years.
We were almost involved in a mid-air collision with an object that was coming out of the east, heading west toward us. I noticed a red light on our port side going south. It was a big red light, but I didn't think anything of it. I thought it would be the port wing of another aircraft. We saw it kept coming at us, and it was a clear night, unlimited visibility. It didn't have any wings. It didn't have any windows, as you would see on a conventional aircraft.
Healy was not the only witness. All 4 crew members saw the UFO, and the 2 pilots filed official military reports detailing their versions of the near-deadly UFO encounter. But Healy is the only one who, 2 decades later, is willing to speak out. He described for Sightings what all 4 crew members attested to when they signed this affidavit.
This was an object that moved at a very fast rate of speed. It saw us probably before we saw it. It just tracked us because we had all our navigation lights on and running and blinking. And then it started back toward us again. Maybe it had never seen a helicopter at night.
The UFO appeared to be threatening the helicopter, maneuvering toward it on a collision course.
The pilot was flying in the right seat. He had to take the controls, and he put the helicopter into a dive.
After narrowly avoiding a mid-air crash, the pilot took evasive action, diving at a rate of 2,000 feet per minute. At 1,700 feet, the helicopter was suddenly paralyzed, even though the controls were still in a dive configuration. The UFO cast an ominous greenish light over the helicopter.
This was just a humongous green light just shining down on us in a very definite cone shape. You could look at the light and you could actually see the beam of the light.
The pilot tried to dive, but instead started to rise. It seemed that the UFO was pulling the helicopter toward it, overriding the aircraft's controls.
In regards to our aircraft climbing, while it was in a dive configuration, I didn't feel us being pulled up as in an elevator or a roller coaster. You don't feel the G-force of a dive or a climb. I didn't feel that. It scanned us for that instant that it hesitated over us. It scanned us. Then it took off.
After the object went off to the west, the helicopter pilot noted that although he had been in a descent and his controls were in the configuration for a descent, the helicopter had actually risen to 3,800 feet.
Jenny Zeidman was part of a research team from CUFOS, the Center for UFO Studies, that investigated the Mansfield encounter for more than 3 years. The interviews, military reports, and diagrams compiled by CUFOS make Mansfield one of the most well-documented UFO encounters ever.
My analysis of this case showed that the object was under continual observation for 5 minutes, perhaps even more.
Despite the impeccable credentials of the 4 military men, the Center for UFO Studies searched for ground eyewitnesses that could corroborate the sighting, and they found them. The DeLong family was driving on the outskirts of Mansfield when they saw a helicopter hovering in the wake of a UFO.
The kids kept hollering. They wanted to stop. They wanted to stop.
She finally stopped the car, and I jumped out. I remember the whole top of the sky was lit up a dull fluorescent green.
I looked out, and the helicopter was just sitting there in midair with this object over it. And to be honest, it scared me. I was scared at that time. But it didn't sink in that it was still really something, a UFO.
The DeLongs were interviewed 3 years after the fact by Warren Nicholson, director of the Civil Commission on Aerial Phenomena. He grilled the family about what they had seen.
I was a little bit doubtful at first that maybe they had just read the story in the newspaper, but they knew things that hadn't been in the article. From the multiple interviews we had with them, you could tell that they were scared.
This brought together 2 groups of witnesses. It established the exact location of the event. We were able to compute the flight path of the helicopter.
Legendary UFO researcher Dr. J. Allen Hynek compiled sketches of the event drawn by the flight crew and conducted in-depth interviews about every aspect of the encounter. At the same time, the military was conducting their own investigation. They ruled the incident a near miss with an unidentified craft. Their findings were inconclusive in large part because the radio transmissions between the helicopter and the tower had mysteriously disappeared. Was the tape erased to cover up the encounter? Or could the UFO have intentionally obliterated the transmission? Coincidentally, many other onboard instruments continued to malfunction weeks, even years after the incident.
The aircraft number was 15444. That was the aircraft we were in that night. She was never any good after that. She was the hangar queen after that. They could, the radios would never work right, navigation instruments, nothing.
The skeptics immediately came up with the idea that this was a meteor. Well, there's no way this could have been a meteor. It lasted for 5 minutes. No meteor takes 5 minutes to cross the sky from horizon to horizon. As far as I'm concerned, the case will not be concluded until we have identified this object.
But after 21 years, the trail is growing cold. The Mansfield UFO will never be investigated by our military the way Detective Healy once took for granted that it would be.
Quite something. Anything further comes along, I'd just be interested in knowing.
Oh, no problem. We've got a reserve meeting the 3rd of November, and if nothing else, I'll find out how far the report's gone from there.
Thanks ever so much.
When Sightings continues, did Alfred Hitchcock know this movie location was haunted?
He would always choose places that would have a mystique about them.
Alfred Hitchcock was film's undisputed master of suspense. He created some of Hollywood's most memorable moments of terror. The shower scene in Psycho, the dizzying staircase in Vertigo, and the ominous ravens who perched atop a quaint schoolhouse in The Birds. Well, that schoolhouse wasn't a set. It was a real building in a real town. And the real family who lives there now believes that it's haunted.
People come here to see this building because that movie somehow affects them. I don't know. Maybe it's the idea of nature finally getting back at human beings.
It was sheer terror, created by the sheer genius of Alfred Hitchcock. He took a real schoolhouse in Bodega, California, and transformed it into a nightmare. But according to The Birds' leading lady, Tippi Hedren, Hitchcock chose the old schoolhouse for a reason.
He would always choose places that were of interest and that would have a mystique about them. I mean, you looked at it up on that hill, and it was really quite almost a bit foreboding, but it was disturbingly populated, and there was nobody there.
Today, the movie crew and their make-believe world are long gone. But some people believe that the inexplicable force that once drew Hitchcock here is still at work and stronger than ever.
Oh, there are bumps on the wall, voices in the hallway, sounds on the stairs. Sometimes I hear a woman singing, or maybe it's a little girl, I don't know.
The sounds of childhood have been heard in the schoolhouse since it was built in 1873, and not much in Bodega has changed since then.
First thing we did, we'd get in lines out in front of the school and pledge allegiance to the flag.
It was called the Potter School, and for 85 years it educated the town's children, and the upstairs meeting room also served as the community's social center.
They used to hold plays upstairs, and they'd have dances and things like that, and then it kind of dwindled down.
But in 1962, the county declared the Potter School unsafe and closed it down. The children were moved to a new, more modern school. But strange phenomena around the building suggest some of the students didn't want to leave their alma mater.
I was alone and was working at the typewriter. There was a slow rap on the kitchen door upstairs. And I stopped typing, and then I saw the doorknob turn.
I heard kids playing in the schoolyard, and it didn't faze me at all because I'm a teacher and I'm so familiar with that sound. And of course, I knew that there were no children here and hadn't been for a long time.
The Potter School has been lovingly restored by the Taylor family. And since 1970, 3 generations of Taylors have called the old schoolhouse home. And everyone who has lived here has had their own ghostly encounter.
When I was 12, I was sat on scaffolding 5 tiers high and actually painted under the eaves of the building. And from the very beginning, it was very spooky.
After we were here at night, we began to hear sounds and steps and things that were all friendly. The clearest thing that I've heard here is right up here in the room over by the stairs over there on Saturday night, usually. I hear party noises going on. Nobody's here. But all of a sudden, I hear a lady's voice saying, "Hey, it's Sunday morning." Right. The party slows down, takes a look, goes right back. And I don't see anybody.
I did see an apparition a few years ago, a little girl. And she actually spoke to me. She said, "Hi!" And the whole room echoed with the sound of her voice.
Despite eerie reminders that they may not be alone, Leah, her husband Rick, and baby Taylor do not feel threatened by the otherworldly sounds and images that surround their daily lives. In fact, Sightings first heard about the activity here after sightseers at the home were spooked by an unsettling encounter.
when we received a phone call from a family of 3 in Washington. They had apparently been vacationing in the area. Their teenage daughter came over to take some photos of the house, and as she was taking the photos, she stated that she saw a young lady standing at the top of these stairs. She told the young girl to move, and the young girl came down the stairs and walked right toward her. And at that point, she apparently just evaporated.
Suspecting a case of what's known as residue haunting, the Office of Scientific Investigation and Research has teamed with Sightings to document the activity here.
My name is Christopher Chacon, and I am the case manager.
For this investigation, the OSIR unveiled its newest monitoring technology.
The robot has and is equipped with telemetry so that it can utilize video, night vision, thermovision, and transmit back what it's seen back to our mobile laboratory.
The robot was programmed to roam paranormal hotspots inside. Super-sensitive microphones were monitored from our control center outside. The baseline readings taken earlier were continually updated and checked for anomalies.
We also were able to document a variety of anomalous cold spots also along the wall, which was west of the main living room.
Much of the investigation centered here, in the upstairs room that was once Bodega's community center, the room where the family has felt the strongest spiritual presence.
I was sleeping in a bed that was right here in this alcove, and I heard the front door open and close, and I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. And I looked at my dog, and the hair on her back was up, and there was a child's rocker right about here, and also a plastic beach ball, small plastic beach ball, and the child's rocker began to rock back and forth, and then the beach ball began to roll.
And the night of our investigation, the same kind of unexplained movement Leah described was caught on tape by our team.
Yeah, wait a minute. That thing should stop by now. That's odd.
The swinging lamp seemed to be an eerie sign that some unknown force was at work. And the next morning, there was another stranger sign, a message written on the outside of a window that had been painted shut years ago.
After people live here for a while and they leave, what it creates is an impression in the environment. And it's sort of like a loop, a videotape loop, playing back over and over again.
I think it's a residual energy of some kind. How that energy is maintained, I am a physicist, but physics doesn't have any explanation for that.
In a search for that explanation, Sightings and the OSIR continue to work with people in supposedly haunted houses in an ongoing investigation of residue haunting. Despite the ghostly activity, the family that owns the supposedly haunted house in Bodega Bay is not moving. They told Sightings that a little paranormal phenomena is a small price to pay for life in paradise.
Next, they're in search of hope and enlightenment, and some believe this book has the answers.
It's a book about sensing another way of life.
Self-styled prophets have been predicting the end of time since the beginning of time. So far, fortunately, they've been wrong. But by some quirk of human nature, prophecies of doom and destruction continually grab the headlines, while the names of people who have correctly predicted enlightenment and innovation are lost to history. But as the year 2000 approaches, that trend may be changing.
If you look at the human race as a whole and all of our accomplishments in science and technology and in the arts, you can say what a magnificent creature human beings are, what enormous potential, and if we could fulfill our potential, what a magnificent future we might have.
We are on the brink of that magnificent future, according to a centuries-old Native American prophecy, and many tribes believe that a living symbol of our golden future has been born. Seers from the Lakota tribe have predicted that a new age of global harmony will occur when a white buffalo is born, and the father of that white buffalo dies right after the birth. A rare event, statistically near impossible, but one that has come to pass in rural Wisconsin.
If they'd have told me that a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, I'd laughed at them. But I guess we got chosen, I don't know why.
The white calf born on the Hyder farm is, genetically speaking, 1 in a million. With the death of the calf's father, news quickly spread about the fulfillment of the ancient Indian prophecy. Now, people from all over the world are coming to see what they believe is a harbinger of world peace and enlightenment.
We knew that we needed to be here, and it's not so much the significance of actually seeing the buffalo, but the significance of what it means having this birth, and it's my understanding that its races will come together and that there will be peace.
The coming of the white buffalo calf really sets a tone for our people, for the children of the 7th generation. So this is a really powerful event that is happening.
There's been prayers said back there. They have
they cry a lot.
They've sang together back there, held ceremonies. They leave their trinkets on the fence. That calf has changed a lot of people's lives. You see them walk in with disbelief on their face, and when they walk out, they got an altogether different attitude. It's almost as if they have looked upon, if you might say, a god.
The same search for hope that draws thousands of people to the white buffalo has kept this book, The Celestine Prophecy, on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly a year. I met with author and reluctant prophet James Redfield at his home in Alabama. We discussed the impact his work of fiction is having on real life.
The polls show that what people want is something beyond just a belief in God or the divine, a belief that their lives are more meaningful than just survival. It's easy to take a cynical view, but the cynicism just reinforces the despair.
The apocalypse has been predicted at many times in history. Do you think catastrophe is inevitable?
I think none of that is inevitable. I believe that what we visualize and tends to come true. I think the universe is set up for that. I think that there's a place perhaps for those people that are saying, look out, the world's going to end. But I think we can't buy into that. It's very, very important that we visualize a positive future.
In his book, Redfield creates a mythical manuscript that sets forth 9 basic truths called insights. The manuscript also predicts that once human beings learn all 9 of these insights, a glorious new era will dawn.
The story is based on a manuscript written BC, several hundred years BC. Does that manuscript exist?
You know, the insights, as I have put them down in this book, came to me through a series of what I would call intuitions or visions. It's a novel. It's an adventure tale. It's really meant to be a parable.
How'd you come up with the insights 1 through 9? Is 1 more important than 2, or 3 more important than 4? Why the rank order?
You know, I think there is a sequence to these insights, and again, you know, it's a sequence to the way we shift our attitude about life and the way we are shifting our attitude about life. They build on one another.
The first insight is that there are no coincidences in life. The insights grow increasingly more difficult to achieve and to believe as readers proceed through the list.
People who've read the book might go along with you on, the first 1, 2, 3, or 4 insights, but by the time you get to 7, 8, or 9, you've left a lot of people in the dust, James.
When you look at modern physics and what they're spelling out is the nature of physical reality to begin with, then it doesn't seem so fantastic.
The Celestine Prophecy may be a novel written by a novelist, but it has sparked a New Age movement, and Redfield is now considered its prophet.
Here you come at the end of the millennium saying there's reason for great hope. Why?
Because I think that there's a core group, a slow, unheralded tide of people that are kind of waking up to the fact that this is a spiritual world, and we're here to grow and evolve spiritually. And the difference right now is that we don't want to just talk about this, we want to really try it, we want to do it.
It is important to reiterate that the Celestine Prophecy is fiction. Author James Redfield freely admits that there is no Mayan temple hiding the secrets of the universe, as far as he knows.
Next, 30 years ago, 2 young girls were murdered, and this man's dreams could lead police to the killer.
Maybe the spirits of the dead girls are reaching out.
Then, a psychic healer works miracles
Henry Rucker healed my eyes.
and encounters in space.
Everyone dreams, at least every 90 minutes while you're asleep, according to recent studies. Most of these dreams are never remembered, but recurring dreams are different. Images that replay in the unconscious mind over and over demand attention. So when one Chicago man had a recurring dream about murder, he knew it was time to call the police.
In the winter of 1989, they began. The first one, I woke up out of a sound sleep, and the girls were screaming. They were telling me who did it, who was responsible for it. The dreams continued from there.
In December of 1957, 15-year-old Barbara Grimes and her 13-year-old sister Patricia left their South Side Chicago home to see Elvis Presley's first movie, Love Me Tender, for the 13th time. They never made it. A month later, their bodies were found near a rural road. Autopsies ruled that the sisters had died of exposure, and the case was closed. 32 years later, in 1989, the case was just opening for Charles Byerly.
It started like one a week, something like that, for about 4 months. And they started coming in color.
Charles was only 12 at the time of the girls' deaths and had no conscious memories of the event.
I didn't know the girls. I didn't know any of the family. I never lived in their area. I didn't know anything about them. So when I found out about it, I was kind of shocked that it was true.
Charles has several recurring dreams. In one, the last terrifying moments for the Grimes sisters are replayed in detail.
One of the dreams that was in color, there was a green Buick, I believe in 1953, something like that. And one of the girls was in the front seat with the driver. I was in the back seat. They were drinking. The girls weren't drinking. Barbara knew who the driver was. She knew who he was because that's the reason they got in the car. The radio was going, you know, everything was fine. Everybody was laughing, having a good time, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't a good time anymore. It became serious. They were in trouble. It got worse as it went along. Everything became like a nightmare. It really wasn't considered a dream to me anymore because it all seemed so real, like I knew them or something. I've known them all my life, and I never did. You know, that's how close I became with them in my dreams.
As the dreams became more frequent, Charles Byerly became convinced that he was being given a message. He sought out veteran Chicago area police officer Jerry Schultz.
I honestly believe him. I have never been one to believe a dreamer before, but I honestly believe him.
You know, he had his facts, and I had my dreams, and the two just seemed to go together.
When we went to the area where the bodies were found, Chuck walked up to the area, right where the bodies were, became very tense. He was upset. He wanted to walk away from that area right there at that point. After looking at some pictures, I found out that this was the spot where the two Grimes sisters were found. This is one of several things that convinced me that his dreams, that there were in fact dreams and they could be very helpful in the case.
I knew the spot because I saw the girls there in my dreams. The trees that come across, the dead branches and things that I saw in my dreams, they were there. So I knew I was in the right place.
Some of the items that he has described to me as being found or being owned by the girls has never been detailed in any news media that I know, okay, whether it be in a newspaper or through television or radio.
One recurring item in his dreams was a special piece of jewelry, a ring that Patricia liked to wear.
I was in a small shack, and I looked up on one of the beams in the corner. And on the very top of the beam was her ring. Later on, I found out that she received the ring for a gift. You know, either on her birthday or Christmas or something like that. And it meant a lot to her.
I believe it is a common thing for people that are deceased to try to communicate with people, you know, through their dream state.
Psychic Jory Ann and paranormal investigator Howard Heim were called in to investigate the places Charles has been drawn to through his dreams. Heim recorded environmental anomalies in the area, while Jory Ann voiced her psychic impressions.
I'm feeling stab wounds. I'm feeling somebody getting stabbed.
Based on my experience, I do believe that the girls are trying to communicate with Charles about exactly what happened to him and why.
This is a strange universe that we live in. We don't have all the answers. Maybe the spirits of the dead girls are reaching out in an attempt to obtain justice. Or maybe the living relatives of the girls are unconsciously reaching out to this dreamer in an attempt to obtain justice.
One night, I had a dream that Barbara was whispering in my ear, not to give up. So just keep looking. Your dreams, remember your dreams and everything. Everything's going to be okay.
No one knows how Barbara and Patricia Grimes were killed, but Charles's dreams have provided new clues that could lead to a murderer.
I would like to see the case reopened. The murderer or murderers are still out there if they haven't died yet. And that's one of the things that Chuck has brought to my attention, that the individual that is involved in this wants to confess. He wants to bring it out. He wants to clear his conscience before he dies.
If the case is reopened, it would give legal credence to the idea that our subconscious somehow knows things that our conscious mind does not. For Charles Byerly, finding the killer would not only be a public triumph, but also a personal relief.
Maybe the dreams will stop. I won't have to think about this anymore. Maybe they can rest in peace. If I'm still dreaming about them and they're still coming at me like this, maybe they're not resting at all. Maybe they want it solved.
Officially, it's case closed for the 1957 deaths of two teenage girls in Chicago. But based on the information provided by Chuck Byerly, Detective Jerry Schultz is now trying to obtain a court order to reopen the case and exhume the bodies. We'll bring you the results of his efforts on a future episode.
Coming up next, a psychic healer's gift.
In medicine, if we were to give a drug and get this kind of response, it would be a miracle.
Psychic or spiritual healing is the oldest of all medical practices. It was an essential part of the healer's art before drugs and vaccines and sophisticated technology replaced the simpler remedies. But now science is returning to the old ways because sometimes they're the only ones that work.
Henry Rucker doesn't know why he has the power to heal some people, but he remembers having a special gift from an early age.
I went to a hospital at 10 years old for a tonsillectomy. I woke up and I couldn't stay in my body. I find myself on the other side of the room looking at me, and it panicked me. And I thought I was dying or was dead. And I tried my best to stay in my body, and finally I dropped off to sleep.
Author Joyce Elaine Knoll details Rucker's amazing healing powers in this book, considered the definitive text on African Americans with psychic powers.
He has an ability to adjust people's energy fields or areas of blockage that a person has that is causing an illness and making them unwell.
30 years ago, Aisha Grice's doctors presented her with a fait accompli. She had an eye disease, retinitis pigmentosa, and was going to be blind. But then Aisha met Henry Rucker at a spiritual retreat.
I got a healing from him and didn't realize it until I went back to the hospital for my regular checkup. So after he worked on me, then the doctors decide that they've made a mistake. I can see and I can drive, and I drive at night as a result of my contact with Henry Rucker.
But can Rucker's psychic powers be proven scientifically?
Henry, in 1 or 2 sessions with a patient, can do more than any psychiatrist or psychologist I've ever known in my life could do in weeks or months of therapy.
Dr. C. Norman Shealy is a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon who has become increasingly disillusioned with conventional medicine.
85% of physicians are honest, caring individuals. Unfortunately, they have been brainwashed from the day they entered medical school. They mean well. They want to help people. They just forget that people are spiritual beings. They're not just machines.
Henry Rucker has worked with Dr. Sheely and his patients on a regular basis since the two first met more than 20 years ago.
December 19th, 1972, I went to Henry's office and I spent 3 hours for a 1-hour appointment.
So he challenged me. He said, well, I understand that you're a psychic. Tell me about myself. Well, I told him about himself and his family.
And I was impressed enough with Henry that I asked him to come up to my clinic to see how good he was at really intuitive diagnoses. And he was excellent.
Rucker has reportedly healed hundreds of Dr. Sheely's patients. Sightings sent a team to the Sheely Institute in Missouri to see if we could document Rucker's healing power as he worked with 3 women suffering from chronic pain. Blood is drawn before the healing. Dr. Sheely believes that an increase in the level of a hormone called DHEA will indicate Rucker's level of success.
People with deficiencies in DHEA have all the major illnesses, heart disease, diabetes, depression, you name it. If the DHEA goes up on these patients, any one of them, even 10% in such a short period of time, I will consider that a near miracle of healing, because DHEA really doesn't change significantly on a day-to-day basis.
Very seldom have I worked on a person that didn't feel better in some way. I can hardly remember a time when that happened. For the most part, something happened every time I've made a healing effort. You have to keep in mind that my thing is a spiritual thing, and that I really don't have a personal control over what happens. Intuitively, I feel very strongly that these 3 people are going to be helped tremendously.
Immediately after the healing sessions, blood was drawn again. After independent lab testing, Dr. Sheely shared the results with his patients. Amazingly, in each case, the level of DHEA increased substantially after Henry Rucker applied his healing technique.
In medicine, if we were to give a drug and get this kind of response, it would be a miracle. I know of nothing that one could do, especially with a single shot, so to speak, in which you could raise DHEA 100% or 55%. So I think this is the most startling evidence of spiritual healing having a biochemical effect upon the body that one can imagine.
I see this as a healing ministry. In my ministry, most of the people that I have sought to help have truly been helped, whether it be emotionally, whether it be a cessation of pain, and sometimes it was almost like a miracle.
The DHEA tests conducted by Dr. Sheely only seem to confirm what patients have been saying about Henry Rucker for more than 25 years.
Henry Rucker healed my eyes and didn't charge me a dime. I didn't get a bill in the mail. I got hugs and kisses when I told him that it worked.
Results like those demonstrated by Henry Rucker have not gone unnoticed by the mainstream medical community. Recently, the National Institutes of Health announced a large-scale plan to study alternative therapies, including Tai Chi, Navajo healing, and the laying on of hands.
Next, Russian and American astronauts describe bizarre encounters in space.
I have seen a snake out there, 6, 7, 8 feet long.
The Russian equivalent of Cape Canaveral is called Star City. Until recently, it was closed to outsiders and jealously guarded its outer space secrets. But in the wake of Glasnost, a Sightings investigative team was invited to Star City. And when we got there, the first cosmonaut we spoke with told us that he had just had an encounter with a UFO.
Sightings went to investigate cosmonaut sightings of UFOs, sightings similar to those reported by American astronauts, but dismissed by American scientists.
A lot of things we see on the picture from space are things we're used to seeing here in the control center down here in Houston. They're ordinary events that surround the spaceship, pieces coming off, water dumps, pieces of ice, insulation. They're just little pieces 10, maybe 20 feet away from the camera.
But within the Soviet space program, cosmonauts insist that they have seen more than just floating scraps of space junk.
I think that we are not alone in the universe. I believe that someone or something of extraterrestrial origin has visited Earth.
In April of 1979, cosmonaut Viktor Afanasyev lifted off from Star City to dock with the Soviet Soyuz 6 space station. But while en route, something strange happened. Cosmonaut Afanasyev saw an unidentified object turn toward his craft and begin tailing it through space.
It followed us during half of our orbit. We observed it on the light side, and when we entered the shadow side, it disappeared completely. It was an engineering structure made from some type of metal, approximately 40 meters long with inner holes. The object was narrow here and wider here, and inside there were openings. Some places had projections like small wings. The object stayed very close to us. We photographed it, and our photos showed it to be 23 to 28 meters away.
In addition to photographing the UFO, Afanasyev continually reported back to Mission Control about the craft's size, its shape, and position. When the cosmonaut returned to Earth, he was debriefed, told never to reveal what he knew, and had his cameras and film confiscated. Those photos and his voice transmissions from space have never been released. It is only now, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, that Afanasyev feels he can safely tell his story.
It is still classified as a UFO because we have yet to identify the object.
Spaceflight itself broadens your horizons to the point which you kind of open up to possibilities.
Dr. Story Musgrave is a veteran of 5 American shuttle missions who has seen and photographed several unidentified flying objects in space. Dr. Musgrave does not believe they are craft from another planet.
On 2 of my missions, and I still don't have an answer, I have seen a snake out there, 6, 7, 8 feet long. It is rubbery because it has internal waves in it, and it follows you for a rather long period of time. The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things out there, and that sort of brings to you really a certainty that other living creatures are out there. Some incredibly primitive, more primitive. Some just proteins coming together, amino acids, and some just single cellular organisms. And other civilizations have been around for a million years that are doing unimaginable kinds of things.
Cosmonaut Afanasyev believes that the UFO he sighted and photographed in 1979 was evidence of just this kind of distant, superintelligent civilization. Does the United States have similar evidence that they're also hiding?
No, I'm sure they would divulge it. That's what NASA's all about. It's about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. I can see no reason that that would be classified in any way, and I wouldn't let it be. I'm an astronaut, I fly in space. I had 5 flights. The second I see some, I'm going to tell somebody.
If you've had a paranormal experience, call the Sightings hotline at 1-900-933-SIGHT. That's 1-900-933-7444. Each call 65 cents a minute. Average call lasts 3 minutes. Sightings is also online. Our email address is sightings@aol.com.
Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
Next on Sci-Fi, The Sentinel.